all celebrate the life of our Miss Leila. You wouldn't be here if you didn't want to celebrate because she touched your heart like she has so many of us. And she's still touching mine. On my way over here this morning, I was nervous, believe it or not. Those who know me know that I like to talk, so I'll be brief, okay? No. Anyway, I was chatting with her on the way over here, and I said, this is your day, Miss Leila. We're all coming together to celebrate your life and how you touched our hearts. And I told her I wouldn't cry, but she knows me too, because we were Louise and Thelma. When I first met her, Brad Hoops introduced me to her 6 years ago. And from that time on, when Carrie and I went over and had lunch with her, we were Louise and Thelma, and we would drag Carrie in to drive a car. But we went everywhere together. I immediately had a bond with her that I'll never forget. You know, I made these little notes about things I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to tell Leila today. And when I announce this, I want everybody to clap. Georgia is #1 in football, Leila. Yeah. All right, there we go. So on game days, my husband Chuck, and that was her sweetie, he would say, call Leila and make sure she knows that the game is on today. And she'd say, what channel? Finally, we'd thumb through all the channels and we'd get her going. We'd get her right on there. So I wanted her to know that Georgia is #1 right now. She would be so happy. So once I knew her, I had to share her with everybody. So the first people I shared her with is my women's group, Gamma Chi. Ladies, stand up, please. These are my support group. And she went to speak at our meeting and she said, how long should I talk? I said, how about 30 minutes? Okay, no, she knew darn well it wasn't gonna last 30 minutes. It was 2 hours, wasn't it, girls? And she never sat down. She never sat down and she just came, we were just smothering her, weren't we? And immediately, when we did Rosie the Riveter that day, we had a luncheon and dinner that evening, and we just celebrated with her and everybody got attached. Well, of course, that wasn't enough for me. I had to go to ESA. That's what we stand for. And you don't need to know that, although I could talk about that too. Then they had the presidents from all the state of the United States that belonged to ESA came to Denver for a conference. And so they asked Leila and I if we could come up and talk. And I said, well, you know what? I don't have anything to say, but she does. Well, again, they wanted about 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes went by. Again, she never sat down. She told her story and she would keep her hands going and just, you know, and then I would go, Leila, don't forget, don't, you know, because I thought the story of how she met Walt was a true story that everybody needed to know. And maybe that'll be shared later. I won't go into it, but it was my favorite story. So, so then I said, okay, now Leila and my friend Jane, would you stand up? She's a World War II Navy nurse. Love you, Jane. So I took them to the Eagles hockey game, and I'm in charge of military night. And we honored them, and Leila threw out the puck, and Jane and I laughed, and accidentally I got honored. I don't know why, but anyway, the three of us cruised around together. And then I said, okay, now, oh, in the meantime, though, Miss Leila, as you know, always dressed to the nine. She had her little jewelry on, her little princess shoes, and that was not my dress at all. I am miserable today. I need my jeans and sweatshirt. So I said to her one day, you know, do you mind if I just throw on my jeans? I'll dress up the top. And she said, well, I don't care. It's what's in your heart. So the next time we went to lunch, she had her jeans on. I loved it. And she looked like a doll too, and they were so cute. So then it was time for the honor flight. And most of you in the room should know what the honor flight was. In 2018, we went on the honor flight together, and there was another icing on the cake. We had a great time. I forgot in there, she was presented the French Medal of Honor. How many of you knew that? How many of you knew that? Wasn't that wonderful? And Brad Hoops has everything to do with that. He pursued it for how many years, Brad? Many years. Many years. And that was quite an honor. We all attended, and we'll never forget that, will we, girls? So then we used to laugh with her. She loved to play bridge. And so she said, well, I'm having bridge this week, and 4 ladies. And so my husband, he loved her so much. He said, okay, Leila, we'll fix you a treat and bring it over. So we would take her treat over for her little bridge ladies. And they thought that was catch me out. And then COVID came, and well, maybe it was before COVID, I'm not sure, but she called one day and she said, well, we have bridge. I said, okay, we'll be over. She called back the next day and said, but this time there's going to be 16. I said, it doesn't matter, Leila. So Chuck made her a snowball cake, it was huge. He said, they aren't going to eat that. I said, sure they will. And, oh, come on in. And so she, Chuck took the cake over, and Leila said they didn't even say me leftovers. Even those who didn't eat shouldn't have. You know. So then in the meantime, military night at the Avalanche. Now, I didn't know this was going to happen. Poor Miss Leila was picked up by a limo, put in the car, and said, we're going to go to wherever. And she just went with anybody. You know, she liked to be out and about. And she drove up to the Avs game, to the thing, and she goes, well, what are we doing here? I thought we were going to a conference and I was going to talk. He said, no, we're going to honor you tonight. We want you to throw the puck out. I said, really? I could have brought my friend Phyllis. I'm like, yeah. So we have the TV on and we're like, oh my gosh, there's Miss Leila. She's throwing out the puck. But she was all alone, but she didn't care. But she said it was pretty cold. She didn't dress for the occasion. So she's done a lot of that. Sorry. I know she's up there listening to me, and I know how grateful she is that we're all celebrating her life. And I promised her this morning I wouldn't cry. But anyway, because she loved her country as much as she did her friends and family, today we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And the flag is over, oh, behind me. The flag is right behind me. So could everybody stand up and let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, now I'd like to introduce my special friend, George. George doesn't know he's my special friend till today, but I'm sure he's okay with that, right, George? Yes. And George is going to sing us a song, and I had all this speech made about George, but just know that George is around a lot, and that if he's in concert somewhere, please go hear him sing because he can make you rock. George.
All right, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? I didn't know Georgia Tech was in first place. That's awesome.
Did you need to just start?
Well, so I was talking to the niece or somebody. Yeah, and there's another one of you. Yeah. I used to, there she is. I used to live in Georgia. I lived in Jonesboro. And Dad was transferred to work for Uniroyal Tires and Colorado native, and so we moved to Georgia where I learned how to hate them damn Yankees. And then he got transferred, had to go move to Newark, New Jersey, where I had to go live with them damn Yankees. Then we came back. Anyway, but I'm a Georgia. Anyway, I'm assuming it's the Bulldogs is what you're talking about. All righty. So since these are very emotional things, I do have the lyrics for me, just in case I get mixed up. But we're going to sing How Great Thou Art. So if you have an opportunity, if you know, how many people know the song How Great Thou Art? Good. How many people know the lyrics? So if I mess up, you can pick right back up. All right, so here we go. Let's all sing it together, shall we? All right. Oh Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the words thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roll thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sing my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sing my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
very long, they were a long gray, huh, George? And George never sat down and I never gave up. But she was with us, wasn't she, George? And George, thank you both. We served our country. None of us would be here and have what we have today. It wasn't the beginning. And I'm so honored to have you with me. Most of you don't like the lady with your time together. But yeah, my 5-year-old, there is no comfort. But you know that I live my life every day to the practice. So, on that note, okay, now we're going to do some new experience. Our first one up is Marilyn, and Marilyn is the daughter of Leila, and the oldest daughter of Leila, and she's from Iowa. Oh, yeah, tonight, and we didn't know Iowa football because, you know, it's only like, so anyway, here's Marilyn. Well, before I say anything, I just want to thank each one of you from Mom for being here. I want to thank you for the love you showed me, for the time you spent with me, going to lunch, just going over to visit, taking her places, making her food. I could just go on and on and on. I just want to thank each one of you for what you did for me. You just love. And you know, she used to tell me, she says, the thing about love, you just never run out. I can love you, and I can love you, and I can love you, and there's always more to bring up for love. And she's a very special lady. So I feel pressured to tell the story. I guess. Yeah. All right, I didn't have that. I will tell that first. Well, I believe they were in Texas in a military base. And Dad and a friend came out of the opposite border. I'm sure they'd had a beer or two. And Charlie Wood was another fellow. And Mom and friend were, I don't know if they were walking by or heading up in. But Charlie Wood comes down there and throws his arm around my mom. And he goes, ooh, I'll take this one. And Mom told us, honey, he has a beer in his breath. And I thought, ooh, gee, you know, just like this. And my dad comes up, takes Charlie Wood's arm, removes it from my mother's shoulder, and says, you know, you're not alive. And he asked her to marry him. And I don't know, was it a week? Yeah, pretty quick. And she goes, get married? We're in a war. Why would we get married? So, and then Mom liked to tell the story. Your dad chased me all over Europe. Dad tells the story. Your mother chased me all over Europe. So you decide. They were married almost 65. And, you know, my parents, it's hard for me to talk about dad because 65 years together is a long time. And they were an ideal couple. They were wonderful parents. They weren't perfect parents. They were sinners, like all of us. Saved by grace. But they were wonderful. I could keep you here for but I won't. I did write a few things. So my mom, Leila, I always called her Leah. And you folks called her Leila the last, 12 or so years of her life. Her real name is Leila on her birth certificate. She was called Little Lala when she was a child. But she was amazing. She was wonderful. She was kind. She was loving. She was sympathetic. She was selfless. She thought of others a lot. She was encouraging. She was kind-hearted. She was very brave. And she had strength that was amazing. She had a forgiving heart.
She was a lot of things. Well, I took her name Lea, and I decided I would just write a few things or tell you a few things about Lea, Leah, my mom. And the L is for loving. And I spoke a little bit about that earlier. She had a tremendous amount of love in her heart for a lot of people. And her love was sacrificial. She would put herself out to help you or to help others. There were so many things she did, and I would call her in the back seat, and then she'd put you in the front seat. You know, that's just the way she operated. She loved each one of you that's here today, and we each share a common thread. We share a love for her. A certain part of her, you know, you may love a part of her that I don't know about, or I may love a part of her that you don't know about, but we have that common thread. We're here because we love Leah. Well, she loved her family too. She was I don't want to call her a Betty Crocker mom, but you know, I was born in 51 and my brother 48. So, you know, we kind of grew up with tater tot casserole and Jello salads and, you know, I mean, kids of the 50s. She was a nurse, and sometimes we'd wake up for school and there's mom sitting at the kitchen table with breakfast ready, and she had her nursing uniform on. It's like, well, this is okay. What's going on, Mom? Oh, the hospital called at midnight and they needed to run a patient up to Rochester. So I went up with them. You know, that's the kind of nurse I remember as a child that my mom was. Or somebody had to have emergency surgery, and maybe it was middle of the night, I don't know, but they'd call her and she'd jump and run. So she'd just come from the hospital or from the ambulance, whatever, and served us breakfast, and we're off to school, and she's on with her day. So that was a memory that I had that just kind of tells you who mom is. Another thing that I remember, and this is more as a teenager, my dad had the radio station, and at 6 o'clock at night, the Twilight Melody Club would come on with Whoopi John and the Six Fat Dutchmen. They'd play polkas. This is all true, you guys. They would play polkas, and then they'd play, like Eddie Duchin, and I'm trying to think of some of the big bands. But we'd have our supper together, usually right around 6 o'clock. And after supper, you know, we'd do dishes, whatever, but Dad would look over at Mom with his twinkle in his eye. And she'd get up and he'd get up, and here they are dancing around the kitchen table, just arm in arm. And oh, you know, as a teenager, it was like, oh, this is embarrassing, you know. And but I those are very fond memories, because, and again, I could just see the love between them. It was really wonderful. Another little story was this little boy, I think he was 3rd or 4th grade, kept showing up at our house about once a week. It seemed to me, maybe it was every other week or whatever. But I didn't know him. He was quite a little younger than me. And Mom would get a little bottle of medicine out of the refrigerator, and she'd get her glass, needle, and syringe and boil it on the stove, because that's what we did, you know. Some of you would remember that. And then she'd get the medicine in there and she'd give him a shot. And finally found out he either had allergies or he might have been pre-diabetic. I don't remember the details of that, but he came up to the house and Mom would give him a shot whenever he needed one. He was kind of on a routine, and because his family couldn't afford to go to the doctor to get the shots, you know. So that's just another little mom story. She'd ride in the ambulance up to Mayo Clinic, because it was about 4 hours from us, if they needed a nurse there. She went to many people with surgery. I just found out from 2 cousins that wrote me sympathy cards and said, if it weren't for your mom, I wouldn't be here. And I thought, what? So evidently she went to stay with them, or maybe she was at the birth, you know, did something that a new mom wouldn't know to do. And they give my mom credit for their life. So I didn't know that till just recently here. But she just kind of had a calming and a kind demeanor that in a crisis situation, particularly medical, you know, she just calmed the waves for you, for many people. She went to surgery with so many friends, I couldn't even begin to name them. But that was my mom. She loved her country. We know how much she loved this country, loved America, and she served her country well. Well, for E, I chose LEA. I chose encourager, eternity, and empathetic. I hope I don't repeat myself too much here. She always had kind of an appropriate word for the moment. She liked to tell me, because maybe I had a little drama. My cousin over here tells me, Marilyn, you're ADHD. And I said, well, I guess so. But anyway, I do get kind of worked up sometimes. Sometimes. And I'd call mom. I'm going to flunk this test. I know I'm going to flunk this test. And then I'll be a disgrace to you and dad, and I'll never finish college or whatever. And she'd let me ramble and she'd say, now, honey, this too will pass. Just take a deep breath. And you know what? It did. So all that worry, fret, stewing for nothing. But let's see. She would say, honey, you just do your best. I believe in you and I know you can do it. And, you know, just those little words, just thanks, mom. You know, that's the kind of mom she was. She knew that there is something else on the other side of this earthly life. She knew eternity. She knew Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. And she believed in the one true God. She worshiped and she loved God. She was my Sunday school teacher one year. She loved to sing in the choir. Mom loved opera. She loved, I don't know if she kind of pictured herself as an opera wannabe, but she was a soprano and I was an alto. She loved to sing in the church choir. And we did that for, I don't know, 7, 8 years together. And that was always kind of a special bond we had together, as just singing the old hymns. And she taught me Bible stories. She taught me scripture, even really to the end of her life, of her 100th year. When Denise and I were here over the 4th of July, you know, we prayed the Lord's Prayer together. She loved the Lord's Prayer. She loved reading in the book of John, all 4 books of John, about God's love for us. My boys used to like to hear her read because of her little Southern drawl. They thought she had a funny voice. You know, she was, well, I've got cousins over here from Georgia, but they thought she was so unique with her speech. And I said, well, if you think she is, you should hear my Aunt Willie, my Aunt Lois in Georgia. You can't even understand them. But she would read them the Tar Baby, Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. They remember that. With my 3 boys have wonderful memories with mom and dad. She had a servant's heart, not just in nursing, but I think just in life, she had a servant's heart. Let's see here. Okay. So the LEA, so the A, I would like to say my mom was always there for you, or always there for me. If you needed her, she'd be there. And that is a treasure to hold with someone. If you have someone that means that much to you, that you know, if you call them at 2 in the morning or 10 in the morning, and they'll be there for you, let them know. Just tell them how much you love them now. Because mom was always there for me. Oh my. I can remember, again, supper time was pretty important at our house because that's when we connected as a family of 5. And 6 o'clock would come, and dad, of course, on the radio station, he always had too much to do. But it seemed like 6 o'clock was kind of the magic hour. We'd all be sitting at the table. Mom have, you know, her, she made porcupine meatballs. Did anybody ever have porcupine meatballs or tater tot casserole, or, you know, those good old comfort food meals? We'd all be sitting at the table, and dad had hit that back door, come to the table and everybody's talking at once. So what they did today or what they did got accomplished, or I need to do this tomorrow and don't let me forget. And that was kind of our, I guess, our connecting time together. But she held us together. That was, that was our family time. And I did want to say this because I'm an old art teacher and kind of crafty, and I save cardboard tubes and I recycle cereal boxes and stuff like that. And Mom never knew where I got that from. She goes, honey, I just don't know how you got this arty, that crafty gene, because Mom didn't have it and Dad didn't have it. And even though she didn't, she said, Joe Lapel needs some help. And this was a nurse friend of hers in town. And Joe didn't have a daughter. And Joe could make anything. She used to take plastic bread sacks and we'd cut them in little rectangles. And then we'd take an old wire hanger, coat hanger, and bend it into a circle. And the hook up there, could hang it. And we'd tie those bread wrappers all the way around and we'd make wreaths. Now, back then we pretty much made Christmas wreaths, but now they make wreaths for all season. But Mom made it a point to put me with someone that was crafty, because she wasn't, And the same thing with piano lessons. She wanted me to take piano lessons so badly. Well, after supper, our meal together, she'd come over to me and she'd say, now, listen, tonight I'm going to do dishes. You go in and practice the piano. I said, oh, Mom, I'll help you. No. Now you go in, honey. You practice your piano, because she wanted, again, she gave up for herself so I could benefit by playing the piano. And that was just Mom. So Mom loved deeply. She loved God. She served him. She knew the words of Jesus, her Savior. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he is the resurrection and the life. And I, without a doubt, I know where Mom is at this moment. And that gives me great joy, tremendous joy, because I can picture her at the feet of her Lord and Savior. And I can just picture him looking at her and with Dad. And just looking at Mom saying, you know what? Well done, good and faithful servant. I'm sure he said that to her. So I just like to again thank you all for being here, and thank you for loving on my mom.
Well, I got another story. It was her 100th birthday. I couldn't go in the room and sing happy birthday to her because I wasn't family. Although she told them that's my other daughter, but I still couldn't go in. So I rounded up my Gamma Chi sisters and some of Leila's good friends, and I said, ain't gonna happen. So I went over there, I called them and I said, we're coming over and you get her to the window, right? And we're gonna sing happy birthday to her, because I'm not gonna let her birthday go by without me telling her happy birthday. So all of you that trailed after me once again, I went to sing happy birthday to her. Thank you, because I know in her heart she enjoyed it, and I know that Marilyn enjoyed it too. So one more quick story before the next guest is one day I went over to pick her up for lunch, and Thelma and Louise go rear in the car, and we're tootling down the road, and the car starts going. She goes, oh, is something wrong? And I'm like, I don't know, we're going to lunch. She said, well, do you think we can make it to lunch? I said, yeah, we can make it to lunch. So I called my husband. I said, there's something wrong with the car. I drive a Jeep. There's something wrong. And he said, well, you better not drive it. You got Leila in there. I said, no. So we made it all the way to lunch, back to the assisted living. And she was laughing. She goes, why don't we break down? I said, why don't we break down? We had good lunch, didn't we? So she loved to go to lunch, and she loved to take rides. We were riding one day in the country, and she said, didn't we go by that before? And I said, well, I didn't think you'd notice, but we're lost. So Brad, I know the program says Brad Hooper, but it's Brad Hoops. And again, thank you, Brad, for bringing her into our lives. And you want to say a few words?
You know, throughout our lives, we all cross and crisscross the lives of many others. I don't know how many times I've said to myself, I feel so blessed that I crossed Leila's life, her path. I first crossed her path and met her when I had the opportunity and the great honor to sit down and capture her story. And if you don't mind, I'd like to tell that story today for those that may not know it. And even if you do know it, it's a story. It's a story worth telling over and over and over again. Images of the injured boys as she treated still appear every time she hears the national anthem. Loud sounds make her flinch. She is still appreciative of every time she climbs under the sheets in bed or takes a shower with its seemingly endless supply of hot water. Her experiences as a combat nurse 70 years ago still conjure up strong feelings for Leila Morrison. Leila knew at an early age that she wanted to be a nurse. This early ambition was spawned by what turned out to be a lifelong enjoyment of helping people. Growing up the youngest of 6 and losing her mother at age 3, her career choice didn't look promising, as her father initially was against it. He thought she was too small for the physical aspects of the job, but she persisted in her ambitions, and he eventually agreed to let her give nursing a try. She actually did so well in nursing school, they asked her to stay on as an instructor. With the war now in full swing, Leila's world soon took a dramatic turn. Army recruiters came to the school one day, and feeling a strong sense of duty to serve, she enlisted in the Army Air Corps. Army training took this girl from Blue Ridge, Georgia, across the country to Colorado, California, and finally to Texas, which became a pivotal point in her Army career, as well as in her life, since this is where she trained to go overseas and also where she met a handsome Army officer. Training involved such things as camping out in pup tents in the Texas scrub, an entirely new experience for Leila. Meeting that handsome officer happened at a dance. The 13th Armored Division based at nearby hosted a dance and invited the nurses. Leila met Walt Morrison and they hit it off, spending the entire evening together. After the dance that night, Leila, Walt, and Walt's driver stopped at a cafe for a late night bite to eat. The restaurant refused to serve Walt's driver, saying they didn't serve enlisted men. Walt then asked for 3 steak dinners to go, and they sat out on the curb and ate them. Later that night, Walt told Leila that he loved her and that he would marry her someday. Leila laughed, telling him he didn't even know her. While Walt clearly saw their long-term future, the near-term future was unknown. Both shipped out for overseas, uncertain of where they were going. Leila took a train to New York and boarded a ship for Europe. She vividly remembers as she started up the gangplank that her friend turned around and said, "We're not playing war anymore. We're heading to the real thing." Arriving in England as part of the 118th Evacuation Hospital, she undertook additional training before crossing the Channel to reach the continent and the front lines. She remembers a humorous incident that occurred in England when a young child approached the group and asked her whether she was a Yank. This question posed quite a dilemma for the Southern belle. She finally answered yes, as she was, and her friends laughed and never let her forget it. Laughter became less and less common, though, when they landed in France and began following the front lines. They were soon treating the wounded from the Battle of the Bulge during what proved to be one of the coldest winters in 50 years. The mobile hospital consisted of tents, and they constantly moved to the front, as the front did, twice ending up ahead of the front lines. Baths consisted of splashing cold water out of a helmet on themselves, and it would be a year before Leila actually took another hot shower. It was so cold at night that with only 1 blanket each, the nurses would double up in a cot so that they would at least have to be beneath 2 blankets. On top of these harsh conditions, there was the stress of being in a war zone. Leila worked in the shock and pre-op tent, trying to keep the boys alive until they could get surgery or other treatments. Artillery shells often exploded overhead or nearby, making her jump. All these conditions left her mentally and physically spent, as well as frightened, but she refused to let her guard down and show it I had to keep my senses about it, she said, and I didn't want the boys to see that I was afraid. It would do no good for them to see me frightened, she said. I kept telling myself, hold on, hold on. The GIs were concerned about the safety of the nurses, and they often looked up at her and asked what she was doing there, word that she was too close to the front lines. Leila said she was prepared to die. Since she had lost her mother at age 3 and her father at 20, and given that she was single, she prayed to God to take her and spare the lives of the other nurses who had husbands and children. Providing comfort to the wounded extended far beyond treating their physical wounds. Leila and the other nurses became surrogate mothers and sisters to the troops. They would sit and talk with them, helping with their personal sufferings as well. Leila remembers having many a soldier show her photographs of his children with her, oftentimes when he had yet to even meet them in person. She helped with the emotional fallout when somebody received a Dear John letter, and sometimes simply held the hand of a boy far away from home and homesick. The boys were so sweet, and they never complained, Leila noted in a tone filled with sadness and affection. In dealing with the horrors of war wasn't bad enough. It got even worse when the hospital was called upon to treat the prisoners from the Buchenwald concentration camp. On the first day of liberation, the doctors told the nurses to stay out because the conditions inside were so deplorable. Once they were allowed in, Leila could not comprehend what she was seeing. Thousands lay sick and dying, many completely covered by lice. A prisoner took her and others on a tour of the camp, showing them the crematorium. She called the camp a factory of murder. Amid all the ugliness she experienced during this time came some joy. Word came in that the 13th Armored Division had made camp right down the road. Soon Walt and other guys who had dated nurses in Texas showed up. With poor communications and both having constantly been on the move, this was the first time they had seen or heard from each other since leaving the States. Walt again asked Leila to marry her, and she said she would not marry him until the war was over. The Germans were finally defeated, and Leila found herself in France in one of the staging camps for the journey back home. Once again, by sheer luck, the 13th Armor was camped nearby. And once again, she was reunited with Walt. He asked her to marry her. He again asked her to marry her, and yet again she told him she would not marry him until the war was over. Both were being sent home for a 30-day furlough and then possibly deployment to the Pacific Theater. Back in the States, they met up in Chicago. While they were there, victory in Japan, VJ Day, occurred, and the war ended. Leila finally said yes. 2 days later, when everything reopened and after being shut down for a national celebration, they married. Walt and Leila would spend 65 wonderful years together until his passing. Walt and Leila raised 3 children, and the family eventually added 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren to the numbers at the time of this writing. Walt owned a radio station, and Leila continued with her beloved nursing. The memories of her war experience remain with her and are still strong. She has a reoccurring nightmare that the Germans chase and catch her. She sees the faces of many boys she treated. And to this day, she cannot take for granted the comforts of clean sheets and a hot shower. Still, she feels grateful for it all. I am more than blessed. I am thankful that I was able to serve. Leila was a very kind, special, caring person. And I'm certain she was that was her by nature, that's who she was. But I can't help but feel that it was tempered by the horrors of what mankind can do to each other that she saw firsthand and experienced. I always felt a sense of comfort and calm when I was around her. She also found it very important to tell her story and the story of her generation so that further generations could learn from it. She would always be willing to speak or come talk whenever asked. As we lose people like Leila and her greatest generation, I often despair that we will never see people like her again, especially now when we really need her experience, wisdom, and character. I firmly believe in the saying, as long as they speak your name, you shall never die. Please never stop speaking her name. I'm so glad our paths crossed, Miss Leila.
Okay, I got another story. It was coming up on her 99th birthday. And she liked to remind me of that. What are we gonna do? I don't know, Louise, we'll see, you know. So I said to my husband, what are we gonna do? Well, it wasn't long till the wheels started spinning. So I said, we're gonna have a party for her. My daughter and 2 grandkids were here from Texas. I'm gonna invite her over for lunch. But that wasn't it. I got a hold of Dan DeRue with Fox 31 News. Oh, he was on it like everything. I got a hold of Russ Morgan's family, and they said, we're on it. We'll bring all of our World War II vehicles. We're gonna make this a party. Then I got a hold of my group of nice ladies again, and I said, let's put it together. So she came to the house, and I had called this place called Card My Yard, and they make signs as tall as me. And they had them plastered on my front yard. Happy birthday, Leila, 99th birthday, I think. So when I went to pick her up at the house, brought her by the house, and she said, oh, you went to all that work and put up that sign. It must have cost you a lot of money. I said, no, Leila, it was all free. I said, come on in, we're gonna have lunch. Oh, by the way, Dan DeRue from Fox 31 is gonna join us. So I don't know how many of you know Dan DeRue from Fox 31, but he's quite a hoot. So he came in and interviewed her, and they took pictures to be on TV and everything. And I said, well, we better go outside. And so we went outside, and coming down the street was a friend of mine that plays the bagpipe, tooting her horn, and a half track and Jeeps and all kinds of vehicles. And the Morgan family was all dressed in the outfits, and just tons of people joined the parade, the police, everybody. And we had cake, and one guy thought I had instead of cake, he thought I would have a keg of beer. And I said, well, Miss Leila doesn't drink beer, we're gonna eat cake. So we gave a big celebration. So now she says to me, you know, it's 6 months from my 100th birthday. What are you gonna do this year? So I said to Chuck, well, I guess I'll have the planes fly over and throw money out. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So then the wheels started spinning again, and I saw that Greeley was having their 100th anniversary Greeley parade and everything. So I called them up and I said, got a plan for you, and I can talk anybody into buying swampland almost. And they said, oh, it sounds perfect. Okay. So they said, I said, but she has to be at the front because she's older and it's too hot to be at the end. Okay. So then I took Leila. We were over at Eaton Country Club having lunch, and she was just in heaven because it was a golf course and beautiful scenery. And we sat there and talked and laughed. We're getting ready to get up, and she kind of stumbled, and the table kind of like that. And these 2 young men jumped up, and he said, you must be Leila Morrison, so that makes you have to be Phyllis. Now he knew from my voice, and I guess he was eavesdropping who we were, and he was a director of the Greeley parade. What are the odds of that? So of course she got fail and couldn't do that. But anyway, that's another story. I'm glad you guys haven't looked like you're frowning yet. So, all right. So the next one is her niece from California, and Denise, if you're on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Denise. I'm Leila's niece. You see me, I'm doing double duty here. I'm actually a nurse. Leila inspired me to become an RN, and I know there's several nurses sprinkled in the audience. And what we've learned to do during COVID is telemedicine. So I'm also the audiovisual broadcast recording expert that's hanging out back here in the production room. So thank you for your patience. As I said, Leila was my aunt. She was a very special aunt. My mother died of cancer, of lung cancer, when I was just 17 years old. So my mother, her name was Lois, was one of Leila's older sisters. And they were among 7 siblings who grew up in the southern Appalachian mountain town of Blue Ridge, Georgia. And you've probably heard Leila talk about Blue Ridge, Georgia. Leila's heritage was from hardworking Christian, Scotch-Irish livestock farmers who immigrated to the area in the 18th century. No, Leila wasn't a Southern belle. She was a Southern lady with grit. So when I think of Leila, I truly think of that. And I also think her memory to me, she was a Southern lady who was fair of face, full of grace, and filled with the fruit of the Spirit. She always had an attitude of gratitude. And this is something deeply personal I'm going to tell everybody, but I think it's important to resonate this light that Leila had in me. One of our last conversations, I came here, I flew into to Colorado, to Denver. I knew she broke her hip. I'm a nurse. I knew what was going on. She was end of life and she wanted to go on. She wanted to go on to heaven. She had lived a wonderful life. It was time to close the curtain and go forward. So when she woke up from her nap one day, and Marilyn can attest to this, Marilyn was my witness, I asked her earnestly, I said, Leila, how am I going to manage and navigate the world without your wisdom? She's been such an advisor, socially, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, to me for my 64 years on earth. And she replied, today is the day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it. And I was like, well, oh, I didn't expect that. I expected, a list or something. But that's Psalms 18:20 or 118:24. And going back home to California, I reflected, I wrote it down. I was like, oh, this is important. I'm going to write it down. And then I'm going to think about it. And I reflected on it. And again, she just resonates wisdom. We can't always control what happens to us. Disease, a crazy economy, powerful others, emotional hurts, but we can focus on what is positive and what we're grateful for. Have an attitude of gratitude, be grateful, be appreciative, be delighted in life, and be aware of what you can learn every day. When I would chat with her on the phone during her last years, after telling me the Denver weather report every time, and then the SEC collegiate football scores, and I'm not a football person at all, but I would let her talk, she would remark, I'm very fortunate in my elderly years. I can still see and read, and I have no pain. So many others are not that fortunate. So every day she was grateful. Secondly, when I recall Leila's lessons in life or learnings that she has bestowed upon me in life, she had what I call a atoll philosophy. Do any of you all know what an atoll is? No? You've probably heard her say it though. Well, as an example, when there'd be an instance when someone would hurt us or disrespect us, or be rude to us, she never showed any hateful or judgmental response. Her response would be, well, honey, I just don't understand that at all. And she would repeat that. And I go, no, Leila, you don't understand. He said this, she said that. I've got it all transcribed. I've got, videotapes of it. Let's go have arm-to-arm combat with them. And I was ready to go. And she would just say, well, honey, I just don't understand that at all. And we really need to understand them and forgive them. I don't know where she kept pulling that out of, but she did time and time again. And I know there's a verse, Romans 12:19, never judge others or seek revenge, but leave it to God, for it is written, judgment is mine, says the Lord. So I believe that's where that little lady got that from. Leila had the fruit of the spirit. Being a Southern lady, she exuded kindness, support, collaboration, friendship, easy conversations. You've heard this from Marilyn, just any type of adjective you're going to use to describe Leila, those are the words that just spew forward. But in my life, it was demonstrated she always remembered birthdays, Christmas, get well, anniversaries. She would handwrite a card and mail it. 99 and a half years old, she's still handwriting me cards, and I have them at home. They are precious. Another thing she would do, just exuding kindness, just the tactical things every day, were the handwritten recipes on 3x5 cards. Barbecue brisket, potato salad, deviled eggs, lemon icebox cake. And I've got my cousin Sarah Bell back there. And just about 2 years ago, we had an intense cooking seminar, and Leila taught Sarah Bell and her daughter how to make sawmill gravy with white lily flour. You have not bought gold mill flour yet, have you? Keep the white lily flour. That's the critical part of it. But Leila, just to delight us, she had her own special vernacular. You know, I know you've heard, well, honey, and y'all, bless your heart, heavens to Betsy, goodness gracious, pretty as a peach. And all of these words and sayings were spoken daily by Leila. And to me, what they are, that's the fruit of the spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And that's Galatians 5:22-23. So in conclusion, to me, Leila was fair of face, full of grace, and filled with the fruit of the spirit. Thank you for celebrating her life with me today.
Okay, I've been a little bit forgetful, but I want to introduce Leila's two great nieces that came from Georgia, which just thrilled me to death. So we have Kimberly and Livy. Yay, I remembered your names. So they come on over. Okay, Landon. Now, there's a story about Landon. Come on up here, honey. Landon was Leila's young sweetie, and my husband was her old sweetie. So say whatever you want.
Okay, thank you. Well, I didn't know I was actually giving a speech till I walked in, so she gave me a little surprise, but we're ready. We're ready for this. All right, I actually wrote something for Leila's funeral. So some of you have already heard it, but I'll say it again, and then I have a couple pretty funny stories I have with Leila. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Landon Schmidt, and Leila was one of my best friends. I met Leila around 10 years ago when I was in 8th grade from her son, Wally. I used to work for Wally. He made me work long hours. Let me tell you what. I'm a huge history nerd, and I always have been since I was very young. My friends always thought I was crazy. They're like, why are you so into this stuff? But I'm getting them there. I told Wally that I was big into history, and he said, you need to meet my mom. She was a World War II veteran. And when I first sat down with her to talk to her about her military experiences, I knew right away that this wasn't just something that was interesting to me, but this was a lifelong friendship. Leila stole my heart at first sight. Her kindness to people, her selflessness, and her desire to make the world a better place was unmatched. She embodied what it meant to be part of the greatest generation. She lived through some of the toughest times in American history, but even at 100 years old, she was more thankful to be an American and thankful to have lived the life that she did more than anyone I've ever met. Every time I called Leila and asked her to go somewhere with me, she would stop what she was doing and go, Whenever I would go see Leila, friends and family would often say, I'm sure that made her day. But what they didn't understand was seeing her made my day. At family dinners and social events, Leila was a woman of few words, but her presence was always the loudest in the room. There was always a lot of things we can take away from Leila and the way she lived life. No matter what was going on in the world, Leila would always say that love will win. Being around Leila, I had no choice but to be happy. She was a ball of love and happiness that was contagious. I'll forever miss going to Leila's home and having lunch with her, and her always telling her friends, that's not my grandson, that's my boyfriend. I would often tell people that if I was 75 years older, I would have married Leila, and that's still true to this day. It pains me to think that my best friend is gone, but I'm happy to know that she has the best seat in the house in heaven. This world does not make people like Leila anymore. She was a special soul to so many people. And when I tell you this woman was famous, I mean, I would see her in the news every other week, I swear. And people would often ask me, who's the most famous person you know? And I have some friends and stuff in the NFL, but I'm not kidding. Every time I turn on the news, something about Leila. And I'm like, we need to make a Keeping Up with Leila Morrison type documentary or something. I'm so blessed to have gotten the chance to know Leila these last 10 years. The lessons I learned from her, I will carry in my heart forever. I've shed a lot of tears these last couple of days, months now. But there's one quote that gets me through the tears, and that is, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. To my forever best friend, thank you for giving your heart and love to me. You might be gone, but I promise you'll never be forgotten. Leila was very special to everyone, and she gave more love than anyone I've ever seen. If you knew Leila, you were family. And that's how she lived her life. And I often tell people that if everyone could have met Leila in this world, half of our problems would go away. Because all she cared about was love. There was no hatred. And I have a couple stories that were kind of funny when I was younger. So I went to Windsor High School, and this was my senior year. It was my last home game, football. And my girlfriend at the time, she was all excited to wear my jersey one last time at a game. And I said, sorry, you don't get it this time. And she said, why is that? And I said, well, there's another lady that I'm going to give it to. So what are you talking about? And I said, well, she's a little older. So that caused a little bit of a fight, but I wanted Leila to wear that. And she came to that game and she sat there for the entire game. It was kind of cold, and but she toughed it out. And so she wore my jersey, and that was a very special moment for me. About 4 or 5 months after that, we had prom. And oh man, my girlfriend's mad at me again. So my girlfriend calls me at the time and she goes, hey, some of my friends are having a party before prom. We got to go. And I said, well, I got other plans here. And she said, what's that? And I said, well, the Good Samaritan Senior Center, they're having a little prom actually tonight. I think we got to go. And she said, what? Why would we do that? And I said, well, we're going. So either coming with me. I said, I have another date. So you can either come with me, or it looks like I'm going to prom alone. She said, all right. So we went to Good Samaritan, and we went to their little prom before we went to ours. And it was really fun. So I tell people to this day that I've had 2 dates to prom before, and not a lot of people get that opportunity. So that's kind of cool. After I graduated from Windsor, I had the opportunity to play football at CSU. And, you know, for those of you that know college sports, like, you're busy. And I didn't see Leila as much. But I'd at least get a call once a month from her, and she'd ask, where are you? Are you alive? Yes, I'm alive. And she's like, you got to come see me. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I would still make the effort to go see her at least once a month. And I never saw her have a bad day. And when she did have a bad day, you never knew. And that was the cool thing about her, is she wanted to know more about your life. Right. I'd ask her about hers, but it always got turned back to me. And she was just so selfless, and she's a woman that they don't make anymore. And people my age could learn a lot from people like Leila. And it's crazy to think that, you know, at 22 years old, she was in Europe, you know, in the worst war we've probably ever had. And I think at 22 years old, I couldn't even tie my shoes. I'm like, I could not imagine doing the stuff that she did. One time I asked Leila, I said, how much hatred did you have when you were over there and you saw the things that you saw? And she said, I didn't have that much. She said, when I, you know, I take care of some of the Germans and stuff. And she said, they were people just like you and me. They didn't want any part of this. She said, it was just a few bad apples that caused this whole thing. And to hear that, it changed my perspective on a lot of things. You know, she was fighting evil, but she knew from a basis level, when you talk to people one-on-one, people were good. And a few bad people can cause a trifecta of hate. You know, it's tough knowing that she is gone. But like Brad said, I mean, she's here in spirit. She really is. I miss her a lot. I do. And I always miss her telling everyone that this is my boyfriend. And for the first couple times, I was like, yeah, I guess I am. But then I'm like, wait, no, I actually am her boyfriend. So I got to take care of her as that is my girlfriend for sure. But she was a good one. And since I was about 16 years old, my dream was to be a firefighter. That was my long-term goal. And when Leila was in the hospital before she passed, I got a call from Fort Collins that I was hired as a firefighter. And Leila was the biggest supporter of that for me.
Me too.
And you, yes, you as well. And from when I started the journey, it took me about 3 years of interviewing across the state to get hired. And when I told her, she lit up. She was so happy for me. And I have about a month left of academy before I am out on the streets. And, you know, every day's hard. Every day's really hard, but I just keep thinking that, you know, Leila wants me here, and she knew that this was my passion and she would not want me to be anywhere else. And I wish I could call her and tell her about all the things I've done so far. But she knows. She does. And I will carry her with me for the rest of my life. And, you know, a lot of my friends, you know, when I graduate, and, you know, I've been living in Denver for the last like 6 months, 8 months. And, you know, I'd see people out and they'd always ask, hey, how's that lady that, you know, you go see? You know, she drew attention from a lot of people my age. And I thought that was really cool. You know, people my age aren't interested in history. They're not interested in, you know, the elderly community. But, you know, if you sit down and just, you know, talk to these people, they can give a lot of good life advice. And I think people my age need that. So I've taken a lot of good lessons from Leila, and she has definitely changed me as a person. And for anyone I've ever had hatred for, it doesn't exist anymore, because it takes more effort, you know, to have grudge and hate in your heart than to have love. And I've taken that from Leila. So I will miss her, but she's around. She'll be around forever. Thank you.
Not through. So when we were cleaning out over at Leila's place, they gave me this football. Said, do you want it, Phyllis? And I thought, sure. If Leila went to a Bronco game, I never knew about it. So we got it home, checking out, looking at all these names. And I mean, I spent hours. None of them were a Bronco. They probably don't want to be anymore either, but. So our neighbor came down and she recognized the name on this football. And it was a Windsor High School football player, and your brother? Your brother. So I want to present him with this Windsor High School football. We went on an honor flight together as Were you a guardian or were you just along to give us heck? Both, okay. It was a long time ago. Okay, so next is Gail. And just to put it gently, if she doesn't mind, this is our Rosie the Riveter. Come on up, Gail.
Thank you, Phyllis. You could have actually just put, rather than just Gail, you could put Rosie. Because every time I saw Leila, I was Rosie. And so when I'd call her or I'd see her, say, good morning, how you doing, Leila? This is Rosie. Oh, Rosie, how are you? You could just hear, and honey this and honey that. I want to tell the story of how I met Leila. I was doing a 40s Forever event at the airport in 2014. And I was doing my Rosie the Riveter presentation for the breakfast. And I talked just a little bit about the women in the military, but the main presentation is actually about the home front and what the women did in the defense plants and all of that. So after I was done, Leila approached me and she said she enjoyed the presentation, but I didn't say anything about the Army and Navy nurses. And I said, you're right. I don't even really know anything about them. And I said, were you an Army nurse or a Navy nurse? Oh, yes, I was, So we just talked for a couple of minutes. And then later that evening, I did a second presentation. And Leila was again in the audience. And when I got to the part about the military, I made sure I mentioned the Army and Navy nurses. Well, a friend of mine was sitting just behind Leila, and she saw Leila just raise herself up and sat even more erect than she ever did. And, she always had such great presence. And afterwards we talked again, and I asked her if I could interview her. And of course, as everyone has said, she's more than happy to tell her story. But she wanted to tell her story, not because it was her story, but because it was a story that so many other women, went through. And so I spoke with her, and after I talked with her, I thought, you know what? Her story and all the other stories of these women from the greatest generation needs to be told. And so Leila was the inspiration for this book that I wrote, Colorado Women in World War II. And it was because of her. It was because of the way she carried herself. It was because of the love she showed that this needed to be told. And, she's the inspiration for that. After we had the first interview, she said, well, you have to do Rosie for Good Sam. You have to do this. And I said, well, sure, I'll do Rosie for Good Sam. So she immediately took me down to the program manager and said, you need to schedule her. And of course, the woman said, well, yeah. So we worked it out. And then I came back another year because she said, well, we've got new people here. You have to tell Rosie again. So, okay, I did. Then they had a new program manager. And the time I saw it, well, we have a new program manager. You need to meet her so she can schedule. Okay. And then I've done a couple other characters and other books. And so she always, you've got to come and do this. And then when she was put into assisted living, and I came up and I saw her, and the first thing she did is, we've got to go downstairs and you've got to meet the program manager. And I said, okay. So we did. And every time I was there and for lunch or whatever, she'd have some friends come by and she's, oh, this is Rosie. We couldn't have won the war without Rosie. And I always felt like after a while, I actually did win the war. And I'm not that old. But it was just, she was always so pleasant and just a joy to be around. And as so many people have said, she brought a sense of calm, a sense of peace. And we don't often get that from other people, and to have someone like that in your life is awfully special. When she went to the honor flight in 2018, I saw her soon afterwards, and she had a little package of swag for me. It was a red, white, and blue pen and other things.
And she said, I told them that I have a friend who's Rosie. And I wanted an extra package for her. And so she brought it back for me. And that sits there on my desk that I can look at, as well as she gave me the postcard from the ceremony. So I miss Leila. I miss coming up and speaking with her, but knowing how much she's loved and knowing that she's in a much better place is some sort of comfort. Thank you. Okay, Mary Ann, you're up. Let me get the word. Where did you get salute? Right, and then ask them to stand.
Phyllis never put me last again. Such beautiful tributes, and I'm bringing up the rear, really. Anyway, you hope so. My name is Mary Ann Meehan Raby, and I'm a retired Navy Nurse Corps commander. The women that are with me now are also retired Navy Nurse Corps officers. Mo Ross is a retired Navy Nurse Corps commander. Kathy Knoll is a retired Navy Nurse Corps commander. And Carol Brodgum is a retired Navy Nurse Corps lieutenant. Well, not really retired, but just she served many years in the Navy, was on a hospital ship during Vietnam. We all have very different experiences. Kathy and I went to the Persian Gulf together in a what they call a fleet hospital, which is really a MASH hospital. How we met Leila was a friend of ours, a physician who is a Navy doctor by the name of Richard Meehan. No relation. I tried, but no relation. Anyway, Richard called and said that he had heard on PBS an absolutely incredible interview with a World War II Army nurse. And Mo and I were the events coordinator for a group of Navy nurses from a multi-state area that we met twice a year. And we're always having a lovely luncheon at the country club and looking for interesting speakers. So Mo is a sleuth on the computer. I can turn it on. So Mo figured out how we would find Leila, and we did. And we called her and asked her if we could come up and talk to her and have lunch with her. And like everyone who met her one time, we fell in love with her. She was just an amazing, incredible spiritual being. And we were very excited to have her speak to us. I want to talk some about, and needless to say, when she did speak with us, somebody had said that she didn't sit down. I had a wingback chair for her because she was 96 for her to sit down and do everything. And she's like, nope, I'm getting up. And I'm like, well, I'll have the chair here for you when you get tired. She spoke for an hour and did not get tired and stood for an hour at 96. I promise you, at 74, I'll be ready to sit down. I wanted to also say, Landon, if you're looking for an older nurse, I would never take her place, that's for sure. But trust me, I'm a Navy nurse and we could have a good time. I wanted to talk a little bit about military nurses. And military nurses understand each other, whether we're Army or Navy we understand exactly what we go through and when we go through it. Lieutenant Leila Allen was part of the greatest generation. And those nurses suffered in a war zone, unlike any of the rest of us. She I'm going to say that military women comprise 1% of all American people in the United States. Out of that 1% of military women, 0.5% are military nurses. And of that 0.5%, even less have ever been in a hot war zone. So that lets you know how incredible and how unique and how wonderful our friend Leila was. Your mother, your aunt. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the virtues and attributes that I felt that Leila had that made her such a wonderful military officer and made her such a wonderful role model for those of us in the military as nurses. And the first one I wanted to talk about is Leila was very authentic in a world where people aren't as authentic and are on, Twitter and everything is just so perfect and they're taking pictures. Leila was always really herself. And she was so comfortable in being herself and sharing herself with us. When she would talk about the military and her experiences in France and Germany, she never talked about herself. She gave everything to her fellow Army nurses. She was a part of a team, and she always reflected the glory on others. Leila was humble. She when she talked about people in the military and was humble to talk about what the boys did, what the officers did, what she found in the prisoner of war camp, what she did when she moved. And they moved in the night, in the rain, in the mud. She was just very humble about speaking that it wasn't so much, it was just what she was required to do. The other thing I want to say is that no greater love hath a man than he is prepared to lay down his life for his brother. And Leila was prepared to lay down her life for her brothers, the boys, the nurses, the Army, when she was 22 years old. Selfless. Leila was selfless. She gave to people. She gave to those boys. She wasn't holding their hands when she was being a nurse. She was working when she was doing that. When she was holding their hands and listening to them and being with them, she was doing that on her quote unquote off time. She gave more than she ever took. And that leads me to saying about giving. Leila gave to each of us. She gave to each of us in a similar way, but she also gave to each of us something different that we hold and cherish in our hearts. And those things comprise the life of an incredible, incredible human being. And we were blessed by our Lord, the Christ, to have had her in our lives. I believe when Leila went to heaven, she's just a very faith-filled human being and believed she was following the path that Christ set before her. And she followed it in faithful and a demonstrative way. I believe when Leila went to heaven, that those boys that she loved and took care of were standing up there and applauding her and saying, "Yay, Lieutenant, yay," as she was running into the arms of her beloved Walt. the Navy nurses are gonna sing right now. We're gonna sing the Navy hymn. And of course, we're behind that wonderful singer. So we're gonna do a cappella, the first song of the Navy hymn. A lot of people think our song is Anchors Away, but it really isn't. That's our football song. But yeah. But it is Eternal Father Strong to Save. And if you've watched any movies about the Titanic, that was the last song that they sang on the Titanic. But it really is a Navy song, a Navy hymn. And we're going to sing the first stanza, which is the traditional stanza. And we're going to sing the fourth stanza, which is about the nurses. And after that, we would like to offer a final salute. Final salute to Leila. And we would like everybody who has served in the military to stand and salute with us, please, and give a final salute to Lieutenant Leila Allen Morrison with our appreciation for her patriotism and with our love to our friend.
Oh, God, protect the mercy. It's the faith in me. Oh, God, devoted hands of skill and bless their work within thy will. Inspire their lives and they may be examples fair on land and sea. For those of you that were in the military, and were able to maybe commend the skills. Our hands will go up when I say render. When I say salute, we'll salute. You let me. Are these gentlemen here? I was from the service for Are they came on to the right of the walls? Based on us. And if they came on to the wrong. But don't be needy. Salute. Fair wind and calm seas, Lieutenant Leila Allen. Thank you. Did that come from you? Okay. All right. Wow. Wasn't that wonderful? And so. Leila used to tell me, I don't know why God's kept me here this long. She'd pat my hand. I said, Leila, you still got a lot of work to do on me. So one day I said that to her again and she said, I can't do anymore. So with that note, George, can you come up and we'll sing one more song for us, please? And then we'll have a closing prayer. Then we have eats, plenty of eats.
Boy, that was very touching. And somebody said that the world doesn't deserve women like Leila, but actually we need more of her, particularly in this country. Not to get too far off, but I always ask people whenever we honor somebody with so much love for the country and love for life, is can we each maybe add a little bit of Leila into our own lives? So anyway, this next song is called You'll Never Walk Alone. So if you know it, please sing right along with me. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, let your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never, ever walk alone.
Remember, you're my special friend, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is the second time for me. He's done something to put the icing on the cake, as they say, make singing for me. So George, it may be coming up again. We need him to come sing at Pam Vet one day, don't we, guys? That'd be great. So I just want to say a couple thank yous and then we'll have prayers. I want to thank my Gamma Chi sisters for always, whenever I say, do you want to? They go, what now? But they're always there. And trust me, if you want to know who Gamma Chi is and ESA, when you're having your snack, I'll be glad to tell you because I love what we do. We serve our community. That's what we do. So they help me. I want to thank the American Legion here in Windsor. I hope you're listening for allowing us to have this. They had planned to have Leila's 100th birthday party here, and they were going all out. They were ready for it. So this is their way of paying back the other way. And she'll never be forgotten, never. And when you have any doubts about your country and what's going on, you just say, okay, Miss Leila, we're there. We're positive, and we're gonna keep you here. We're gonna keep you in our hearts. And our country is gonna have to learn that we're here to fight, right, guys? Yes. Okay, so in that, we'll have our prayer, and then we're gonna have food back there, and you've got to stay and eat because we got lots of food, okay? And if you don't want tea and water and coffee, the bar is open to have wine, whatever you want. Soft drinks, we don't have soft drinks, but you're welcome to that. And again, from the bottom of my heart, very bottom and top, thank you for coming today and sharing my friend.
Well, let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, you know each one here. You created us, you gave us all we have. And Lord, you gave Mom, Leila Emmeline Allen Morrison, to us. And we each take a part of her with us today. Very special woman. And we thank you for her life. 100 years on this earth. And just like a ripple effect, when you throw a stone in a puddle of water, it goes out and out and out and just keeps going and going. So my prayer today, Lord, is that we can take her love, her determination, her strength, what she meant to each of us here, and share it with those we love. And that'll have a rippling effect, and it'll just go on, even to the next generation or the following, as it just continues on. So we thank you for her life. Thank you that she moved here from Iowa in 2010 and met so many wonderful people that just embraced her, loved her, supported her, and gave so much to her. Thank you for her life, loving you, loving her country, and loving each one of us. Just thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. And God bless you all.
Up here on this front table is some cards of Leila's. When she went to Normandy, she said she had to sign 1,000 of them. So she gave me some and I still have them, so you're welcome to have one. Just give us a minute to get the food out. Do not leave.
Okay.